What you are about to hear is meant to transcend time. Its purpose is to draw a line from the visionaries of today to the preservers of tomorrow to the patriots of an age yet to come. I'm Dave Milner. On September the 23rd, 2013, I released a recording I'd been wanting to make for some time. The program that was a minor reason for starting a show in the first place. 2 years from that initial podcast, the threat to individual liberty has only grown, not only in the United States of America, but around the world. This drove me to make notable updates to that original show. The audio may sound different at some points, because my recording methods have changed. This is necessary because I intend to run this show once each year as long as I am able. I invite listeners to share links to the following recording with all they know who value personal liberty. Show hosts and producers have my permission to use it as long as I receive proper credit, but far more important are the suggestions and messages it holds. They make up a formula that leads humanity from totalitarian darkness, an outline for the resurgence of the individual, a plan for the way back.
Stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name's Dave Milner. I am the Unlimited Blind Guy. I often do shows based on what strikes me. I might see an article or I might hear commentary that I think needs to be addressed or something like that. And this show is no different. What I want to do is address how we find the way back. Now, I think it's become pretty obvious to a lot of people that the United States of America is not the same country that it was when many of us were kids. I think you can say that if you're pretty much over 40 years old. I think it can also be safely said that we have to adopt a variety of strategies and tactics for dealing with this situation so that we can return to a point where personal liberty and a government governed by the people is the norm instead of the other way around, which it is now. I take a lot of techniques and whatnot from pop culture. And some time ago, I saw our personal liberty slipping away, and it reminded me of a series of science fiction books written by Isaac Asimov, the Foundation series. The first 3 Foundation books, Foundation, Foundation and Empire, and Second Foundation, addressed one very important thing. In these books, a galactic empire, which had represented order and peace, was breaking down through decadence, corruption, and other issues. The hero of these books believed that it would take 10,000 years before a new empire that would have real benefits for its people would rise again. So what he tried to do was to create social engineering that would guide people so that instead of 10,000 years, what he called interregnum would only last a single thousand of years. Now, I put that in terms for today because we're very close to, and in fact, I believe personally that we have tipped over the point where personal liberty is no longer a priority in government. It has switched to control. Now, I know, and I think anyone else with sense knows, that there will come a time when the people demand a return of personal liberty. They will see their government as overreaching, dictatorial, heavy-handed. It's already beginning with some, but it's going to take quite a large amount of time, in my opinion, for that to sink in and for the average man and the woman in the street to demand a return to a time when the government will actually be run by the people. Now, this could take some time. If you look at the model of the Soviet Union, what you saw was that the communist system after 1917 lasted for 70 years. And if you look at Russia today, you see that many of the same old hardliners that existed at the end of the Soviet Union are still around and still have influence. They still haven't managed to throw off many of the shackles of totalitarianism that communism has put on them. That being the case, one has to wonder how long it will take us here in the United States of America to return to a point where we demand a government that is run by the people and does not run people itself. Now, I tend to think of this time as an interregnum, as Asimov put it, and I tend to look upon conservatives and libertarians and other independent thinkers as the people who will bring the populace of the United States of America through this interregnum and into a point on the other side where the people will have the tools and the power to once again regain personal liberty. Now, 10 months ago, I wrote a piece, I guess you'd say, called American Sputnik, and it was fairly well received. If you haven't read it, you may want to do that. Now, this was inspired by something that Kurt Schlichter wrote called The Conservative Insurgency. I had these thoughts of some way to manage and preserve the correct information through the leftist interregnum into when it will be needed. But Schlichter kind of beat me to it. He beat me to it by a few days. Not being daunted, I saw one or two things that he hadn't put in and decided to put those in myself. Reiterated a few things that he said and came up with something pretty good. So if anyone hasn't read that, you may want to read The Conservative Insurgency by Kurt Schlichter and American Sputnik by me. I'm going to put both of those in UBG Contact on the Twitter. Now, I felt, given the current commentary going on in the conservative community, that it was a good time to revisit American Sputnik and to add a few things to it. Now, I'm not going to read you the entire thing. What I am going to do is give you kind of the general sense of it, and I'm going to expand on it with new thoughts that I've had. And looking at the first paragraph, I see that, yes, the basic premise that I wrote down is still true. The leftists have only gotten stronger in media and pop culture, and conservatives are not going to be able to compete with them in that arena with the same strength. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't compete with them, or that we shouldn't try to compete with them. Not at all. It is saying, however, that we're not as strong as they are. Now, there are some people who are going to look at my whole viewpoint and say that it's defeatist, and that all we need to do is hunker down and work a little harder, and we can win through this thing, and it's all going to be all right. And listen, I'm not saying that people shouldn't try to deal with things as they exist now. I've never served in the military, but I do understand the difference, in this sense at least, between strategy and tactics. In this sense, tactics is how do we deal with something that's here. Strategy is how can we plan for what's coming. And what I'm talking about doing with American Sputnik and what Kurt Schlichter was talking about doing with the conservative insurgency is strategy. It is dealing with the future. And that's not to say that we can't move on all levels to try and restore personal liberty. Anything that we can do that's nonviolent and productive to further the cause of personal liberty and to keep it in the minds of the people is a good thing. No one says that we just have to hold with one technique or one strategy. There are more conservatives than you think, and we can all do different things. We're all good at different things. And this is our strength, I feel. So we all should do these different things. Basically, it's about find what you can do and do it. You don't have to do everything. I know there are some people who say you have to do it all or you have to at least try to do it all. I say do what you can. Do what you're comfortable with in your abilities, and if you have to leave your comfort zone because you feel that it's important to further the cause, that's even better. Okay, but do what you can. And what I and others can do on one front for the personal liberty of people is to talk about strategies moving forward into what I believe is going to be the next century. This leftist dark age is going to take an awful long time, folks. I do not expect to be alive to see the other end of this. It would be nice if I could be, but I don't think I will be. So what I'm going to do is try and lay out some strategies that people can use in the years moving forward. Because if this doesn't stop with us, it can at least start with us. And that's what I talked about in American Sputnik. Now, Americans don't like to wait. We've been raised in a give it to me now culture for the most part. And most of us are impatient. We don't like starting from the start. Baby steps are something we hate, or as Richard Marcinko put it in some of his books, I hate bleeping square one. But that's where we are, and that's what we have to deal with, and that's what we will deal with. Now, as I pointed out in American Sputnik, what we have to do begins with the education of our kids from K through 12 and beyond. What the left wants to do is summed up in Common Core. And Michelle Obama rather chillingly said that we have to change our traditions and we have to change our history. And let me be clear about this, folks. They mean exactly that. Now, you don't believe me? There was a recent story about a textbook being used in Denton, Texas. That's a suburb of Dallas. Denton is, by the way. That supposedly points out supposedly teaches the history of the United States. And in that, it has its version of our Constitution. And in its version of our Constitution, the Second Amendment, as far as this book is concerned, says that people have the right to bear arms as long as they're in a state militia. This is absolutely not what the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States says, but this is what's being taught in our schools. So we have to educate the young ourselves. We have to basically deprogram them, because Common Core is going to be the new norm in most schools. If we can get our kids out of public schools and homeschool them, so much the better. If we can get them into private schools that have curricula that we approve of, so much the better. But the alternatives for educating our kids are going to grow fewer and fewer as the left slowly tightens its grip on our educational system. They will make sure that no one can get any kind of official certification who hasn't gone through their program. So, what do? In Part 2, you'll hear concrete strategies and tactics that you can use in the struggle for individual liberty. That's it for this time. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2015, Anno Domini.